Hi folks, welcome to the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast by Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter. In this podcast, Gary shares everything about servant leadership, service leadership, authentic leadership, how to create high performance cultures, service excellence, and life balance. Here's your host, Gary Ryan.
Thank you, Sienna, for your lovely introduction. Folks, I'm delighted to have Brian Livingston here with me for this episode of the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. Brian is waving away there for those of you watching the YouTube version. He's a former police officer and the founder of My Guru Mentoring. Over the last 20 years, he has helped hundreds of people create and grow their businesses with a combined net worth of an amazing $100 million and growing. It's a pretty awesome effort there, Brian. Today, his focus and passion are with first responders. He was a first responder himself, being a police officer, which connects to my family, where my eldest son is a first responder as a police officer too. So his focus and passion is with first responders who need a career change but are still looking for a way out because they don't know how to do that. Through his program, From Broken to Rebuilt mentoring program, he can help first responders start fresh and create the happy, financially secure future, which we know matters, that they and their families need and deserve. Brian's on a mission, which is a wonderful mission. It's important to have goals in our lives, to mentor 10,000 first responders to each create businesses worth at least $2.5 million by 2023. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Brian's in Canada at Grand Prairie, a beautiful open space, which is an amazing history, as I've learned over time. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks, Gary. Really appreciate you having me on board here.
Now, I'd be interested to start with just a minute or two about your own transition from being a first responder. What was that like for you?
I think in order to understand the transition, what we've really got to do is we've got to understand the point that I was at that made it so that I needed that transition. And, you know, this is something that first responders especially will be familiar with. And, you know, even though it's over 2 decades later, I can remember laying in my bed, looking up at my ceiling, and literally I can still draw the water stain that was in my ceiling. And I remember alternating between staring up at the ceiling and rolling over and look at the red numbers on my alarm clock as those numbers ticked down to me having to go on another shift. And how mentally I wasn't there anymore. And I remember thinking one night, I just went, I can't believe all these people were right. And what I mean by that was when I first got into policing, right after I came out of the police academy, and I was so gung-ho and I was ready to go. And this literally happened to me in my first week, and I can't make this stuff up. I met this one officer. He had about 12 years in, and the first thing he says after he introduces himself to me is he says, "Get out now." Like, don't even get through your first week. He's like, quit. You need to quit today. This is not a career that you want. And I was just like, oh, whatever, dude. You know, like I've just come out. I'm super buff. We've been doing nothing but lifting and running. And, you know, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And then another guy comes up to me, introduces himself, and he says, "How well do you sleep?" And I said, "I sleep great at night." And he goes, "Well, that's going to end soon." And the third thing was actually my father. And my father said to me, "You need to pick 2 people that you think really have it all together and they're successful, and you want to model your policing career after them." And the one guy, he was a sergeant at the time. He eventually went on and became the chief of police. And the other guy, within my first year, he took his own life down in our locker room with his own gun. And I just remember that laying there, and I'd had a complaint that just it broke me. Um, and as a result of that, I couldn't believe I was laying in bed and going, what happened? All these people that I thought were so wrong were so right, and I knew I needed to get out at that point.
So therefore, Brian, and thank you for sharing your very deeply personal experience. Therefore, you had to make some steps to get out. So to lie there and look at your clock and the red numbers on your clock as you described, and to be realizing I need to get out is one thing. To then take the action to get out, I would imagine with a lot of folk you've worked with, that action to get out happens way later after they've made the decision to get out. Is that somewhat accurate?
Oh, it's 100% accurate, Gary. The first thing that you need to make sure that you do is that we need a plan, and step one is that um, we need to make sure we go and get help. Um, Everyone always kind of looks at this stigma that admitting that you're having a problem is a weakness, right? Whereas in reality, there is no greater strength that you can have than stepping in front of a bunch of alpha personalities and admitting that you need help. That takes way more strength than burying it and trying to compartmentalize it. So
Yes.
if you're, whether you're fire, whether you're, ambulance, you're police, you're a 911 operator, if your department offers you mental health assistance, you need to go and do that. I won't work with anyone unless they've already started that process and they're into
Yes.
it. Okay, because we've got to literally they're broken at that point or they're breaking. And we've got to, catch them if at all possible before they're broken. If not, we've got to get them back on the right track. The next part in that plan is going, okay, where am I at income wise? What do I need to replace? Um, One of the biggest things, and this is something that you and I know we've both done in relation to the stuff that we do with Grant Cardone, is do the who are you test,
Mm.
right? And just listing everything that we are. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a brother, and going through and figuring out all those things that we are. And it really helps bring back into perspective
Mm.
how little of our life being that first responder actually really is. And we have so many skill sets that we could then go with to try and develop a new career in business and get out of policing. So, how much bank time do you have? How much sick time do you have? What do you have in terms of holidays? What do you have in terms of pension? We've got to sit down and we've got to figure out all of these things because, especially financially, the biggest concern is how am I going to replace that salary? And that's where so many people kind of just get locked in
Yes.
and they never look and they don't try and plan their way out of it.
Yeah. And with so much of what you've mentioned there, Brian, this can be done while you're still in the job, you're still working as a first responder. And what you were just saying about asking for help and accessing the mental health services, and even if the organisation doesn't offer anything, which is be unusual in today's day and age in 2023, but even if they don't, there's so much material out there that people can do. And one of the things I advocate, and it's certainly in my book, Yes for Success, and Grant Cardone talks about feeding the beast, is we've got to be feeding our own minds positivity, whether you're a first responder or not, in fact. Now, clearly, because of what first responders get exposed to, they need to be feeding their mind positivity and being responsible for that as much as possible. So if there's any first responders who are currently in a first responder role, I'd encourage that, number one. And secondly, we get our cars serviced before they break down. our minds need servicing in inverted commas too, right? And so many people are in the workplace, and because of that bulletproof attitude and all of that, alpha male stuff, which affects the females as well and folks of other genders, that
Yes.
on bulletproof mindset, they don't take action to feed their mind, and they don't be proactive with mental health activities when there's not a problem. When in fact, doing that work helps protect you whenever the issues then pop up, which can come out of nowhere, as you would have well experienced with your colleague and mentor at that time committing suicide in the station. It's interesting you should share a story like that, because my own son has already had that experience with an officer at one of his stations he's been at. Thankfully, from my point of view, he wasn't working that day, but I really send my love to the family of that particular officer and the colleagues of that officer, because that was not very long ago here in Melbourne, Australia.
I'm sorry
So,
to hear.
yeah, and look, we both know this is a global issue. And folks, I might have mentioned that Brian's in Canada, but his offering is globally to first responders. So we want to make that absolutely clear. This is a global opportunity for folk. And maybe for some of you, if Brian's in a different country to you, that might make it a lot more, make you feel mentally safe to engage with Brian and his assistance, because his programs actually work. So with your program from Broken to Rebuilt, can you tell us a little bit about that? You mentioned that folk you work with need to be working on their mental health to come and work with you in the first place. So that's one box that they're ticking. There's some other aspects of that program, and maybe even a success story or two that you're happy to share if you've got permission to do so, Brian.
Well, most definitely. In terms of a success story, it's interesting because I had a gentleman who, obviously we've developed a friendship beyond, and he had left. He'd actually ended up getting injured. Mentally, he was done, but what really forced him out was the fact that he got injured, and his back was so bad that he was not allowed to come back into the work anymore. And so he was forced out, and he had to find a new career all of a sudden. And I ended up running into him one day, and he had gotten hooked into some guys who were doing business who I happened to know, and they were not reputable people.
Okay.
Like they really weren't. And so him and I went for a coffee, and I sat down and I just talked with him, and we talked everything through, and I let him know some things that he wasn't immediately aware of. And we sat down and we really focused on what his strengths were. And so we got him out of what was going to turn into a second very negative situation for him, to go from policing to another bad situation. And we got him to start up his own company from scratch. And it was just funny because I was talking to him about 2 weeks ago, and he's now making over $400,000 a year. And
Wow.
and that was just a sole guy. He's got his own business, and he's gone on. And I've worked with companies that have former first responders in them, and obviously we've had some great success. I've worked with financial advisors, but really my true passion is the first responders, because although, yeah, great, I can help, rich people get richer, and everybody needs help. It's the first responders and that mental health issue. And I don't want them to go through what I went through. You and I were talking about your son, and I don't want him to get to the point that I got to, and they need help. They need that assistance. And as you said, we maintain our car. If you're doing it properly, we're doing that preventive maintenance ahead of schedule, not because, and it's not out of necessarily necessity, but it's just smart. right?
Oh yeah.
And he needs to be doing that now. All the first responders need to be doing that now. That way, if we have to take that step, it's going to be much easier because we have a stronger base to work from when we develop that plan.
And the fascinating thing, again, on that metaphor, but it is a practical metaphor about
Yep.
servicing our car, is we might spend $1,000 or $2,000 a year on that preventative maintenance because that's what the schedule says and that's what it costs. We just go and spend that money and we do it. And yet people won't spend money on their own mind and on their own selves and their own clarity for their future and looking at the possible options while they've got a job. It's best to do this while you got a job if you can, because then you can be, having your deliberate holiday break in between your new you, whatever that might be. But to have someone that they can lean on who actually understands the steps, has worked with people for years, has the success stories, and knows what they need to do. Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment is my new book. It's out now. Check out the link in the show notes for all the details of how to get the new book, Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment. It's going to teach you a whole heap of strategies around how to have increased happiness now and into the future for your life. If not for you, get it for someone else that might be struggling or floating along in life. This book works. And as you can see, folks, the book debuted at number 6 on Amazon. So people have reacted to it very positively. Check it out. You can get your copy too. Now let's return to our interview with Brian Livingston. From the transferable skills point of view, I know everyone's unique and everyone's different, but I'm wondering, Brian, are there some fairly common transferable skills that you found across the first responders that do seem to apply to new careers quite well?
Most definitely. I don't think you need any area of expertise. I think it's more the ability to acknowledge that you don't know it all, right? And although I can't speak for you, I can definitely say I don't know it all. And when you look at some of the top athletes in the world, when you look at LeBron James, you look at Tom Brady, you look at people like that, they all have mentors, right? Grant Cardone openly talks about the fact that he has mentors. So if the top athletes in the world and billionaires are having mentors, why are we not being open to find someone who might have already walked that path and be willing to reach out to them and say, you know what, give me some help. What can I do, instead of trying to say, I already know it all, I don't need help, I'm too strong, I can do this all on my own. The biggest trait they can have is to go, I don't know everything. What do I need to do? And have that willingness to learn and then follow through. Like, we have to take action, right?
Yes.
That's one of the biggest steps of anything, first responder, whatever, you know. And one of the things I'll tell you, Gary, that I'm going to be doing is, I think your book is a great step to help people to be able to plan, and it's going to be something that is going to be a must read and a must use for all of my clients on a go forward, because without having a plan, all you're going to be doing is treading water, right? And we've got to take action to move forward.
Yeah, you're 100% right about the learning. I mean, Carol Dweck calls that the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset is, I'll learn in my lane, but I won't actually be vulnerable to learning outside of whatever I think my lane is. And this becomes a trap for not only first responders, but people in many careers that get themselves trapped because of the fixed mindset, versus having that learning mindset and be, well, hey, I don't know it all, but hey, I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to literally do whatever it takes to learn whatever I need to take. And that demonstrable ability to learn is the key transferable factor into any new career. Like the gentleman that you just described earlier with the $400,000 turnover in his business now, who was going to go down the wrong business path. From being a first responder to a business person, they've had to learn how to run a business. They've had to learn how business works. They've learned how to sell, no doubt. They've learned how to deliver, no doubt. And that's all come from that idea of action and having the plan. And as you say, I thank you very kindly for your kind words about Yes for Success, because it is the process that enables people to actually work out what they need to do for themselves. We know that the structure works, and again, the beauty is this work can be done if look, unless someone's in the situation where it's so mentally unhealthy for them to stay and they need to get out and then worry about what happens next, then obviously those folk need to get out, take whatever leave they've got, as you've mentioned. For a lot of other folk, though, this work can be done while they've got the security of that income, but they've just got to dedicate themselves to doing it. And this idea that I don't have time is a flawed mindset. Anyone has the time to invest in their future. All they have to do is to decide to do it. As you said, Brian, put in the work, right? So what does some of that work look like with you? How does some of that sort of manifest itself through your programs?
Well, it really all depends. First of all, it always starts off with a phone, like a Zoom consultation or something like this with you, and that's always a free consultation, because we've got to figure out, first of all, whether or not we're a fit for each other.
Yes.
Right. Like, my personality may just rub you the wrong way, or, like, we've got to make sure that we're a fit.
Yes.
Right. That's step one. And then second of all, we've got to decide, are you going to be better off in a group coaching situation? Are you going to be better off in a one-on-one situation? Where are you? Have you already left being a first responder and you've already started off a business? Do you have employees? Are you still going to try and start this as we term over here, a side hustle, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And if we can do that, that's great. Let's start to figure out what we've got to do. Okay. Let's start getting that plan in place, and then let's set targets, right? We've got to have goals for ourselves, because if we don't have a goal, we don't know where we're trying to get to.
Yes.
Right. And then we're going to reverse engineer that goal down into tiny steps that we can take bit by bit, so that we can then get to where we're wanting to get to. And at a certain point, you can step away finally and go, okay, I've now got it. Or do we have to jump into the deep end of the pool and go, I'm already at that point that I need out today.
Yes.
And then obviously we've got to accelerate that program as much as possible, because in all likelihood, they've got a family that they've got to take care of. And we've got to make sure that all of those needs are being taken care of. And sometimes that may even be, the spouse or the children need to take advantage of what mental health support is out there, because there are programs where the spouses can get together and meet and chat and everything, because they need support, not just financial support. They need that mental health support as well, because it's not easy living with,
No.
first responders. Sometimes it's because they wall themselves off to deal with the pain that they're experiencing and seeing on a daily basis.
Well, the shift work, for example, has an impact on a family.
Yes.
Someone's trying to sleep through the day, and children are coming home from school, or the spouse is keeping the house organised and usually working themselves, whether that be a male or female spouse with their first responder. So the households themselves, the children have still got their sporting engagements, their school engagements, all that running around still needs to happen. But whoever is the first responder is not available for a lot of that, because they're they're out working, and so the need to engage other family members, and as you say, and this is again, I know we're specifically talking about first responders, but this is a strategy that is useful for all families. Is that,
Yes.
it's in everyone's interest to be doing work on feeding their minds through mental health programs. There's a lot of free material out there again, but there's a lot of programs that are very cost effective, that are worth people doing. There are the self-help groups, for want of a better description, as you described them, Brian, with the spouse groups, etc., which are, again, it's just helping everyone be in a better mentally healthy space, because the world can be a challenging place anyway, let alone for folk that are working in the first responders. And it was really great that you mentioned too that we're not just talking about the folk who are literally feet on the ground, because you spoke about in your world the 911 call staff here, their 000 staff here in Australia, who are taking the calls and are very often coaching someone, an untrained person, throughout a scenario of some sort. Could be the something amazing like the birth of a child, through to helping someone stopping from hemorrhaging. That's been involved in a car accident or something like that, for example, and coaching people through them, and that could be a traumatizing experience for the actual staff member. Correct?
Oh, I 100% agree. I'm actually involved in a group of current and former first responders that meet once a month, and we have a couple 911 operators in there, and they are just, I can't go back. Like they've dealt with so much trauma. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's over the phone, but it doesn't mean that wasn't a traumatic experience for them.
Yeah.
And so they need that help as well. I definitely agree.
So for some of the folk that have transitioned, what are some of the industries that they've transitioned into, either as an employee or through running their own business? Given that you've got the businesses that have turned over $100 million that you've supported over that 20-year period, what are some of those industries, just to plant some seeds in some of our listeners' minds, Brian?
Well, some have gone on to be financial advisors. I have worked with them. Others have gone on to do, some type of first responder related work. I
Okay.
personally recommend for them to not do that,
Mm-hmm.
just because it may still bring back too many memories, and they're going to have a hard time dealing. Um, they've moved on. They've gone into court, traffic ticket agents. Some of them have gone on to specialize in collision investigation. Measuring up accident reconstructionists. Some have even gone on to work in, even though they're not running their own business, they've gone on to work on in the mental health industry, where they've
Yes.
been able to get themselves so right that they're now running some of these, businesses. Even though they're an employee, they're a
Yep.
key part of going out and reaching out and helping those other people. Um, some of them have gone on to do commercial vehicle work. Literally, we've got guys who've gone on painting. We've got landscaping. We've got
Mm.
snow removal and lawn care, and it really doesn't matter, because it literally comes back to that: who are you? You
Yes.
know, where do you have a skill set, or where do you have a desire to want to be? And as long as that is marketable, then we can grow it, because the it, it, although each business is unique in and of itself, marketing and sales is the same thing, whether I'm selling the coursework that I do, or you're selling your book, right?
Mm.
It's still doing exactly the same thing. So we can apply all of those things right across whatever industry that you want to then move into. We can work with. I don't care if you're a painter. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is Are you open and willing to learn? That's what it comes down to.
And you did mention Grant Cardone briefly in our chat, and what folk in the audience might not know is that both Brian and I are 10X business coach licensees. That's how we've met. And so we have access to all of Grant Cardone's extraordinary library of resources to help us as we help guide people through their own businesses and help their businesses to grow by 10 times. That's the whole 10X philosophy. And while obviously that can't be promised, it certainly has made a massive difference, I know, to my own business, and I know to Brian's business as well. So we are actually people that are applying what we're learning through Grant Cardone to our own businesses and helping other businesses apply it in their instances as well. And as Brian's just described, as long as you've got something that's marketable, it doesn't matter what it is, you can get out there and provide a service to people. Brian, what would be some of the best ways for folk to contact you to get engaged with you and your programs for first responders in particular, so we can hit that 10,000 number of people?
The easiest way is to go to mygurumentoring.com. I have a landing page there that will then allow us to be able to set up a time to do a one-on-one call, right? And understand that the call is confidential. Okay.
Cool.
And we're never going to release that information to anybody else unless ultimately you tell us, okay, you know what? I want to give you a testimonial. I want to be, show that I'm one of your success stories. Then with your permission, we will do it. But other than that, it's 100% confidential. Okay. Reach out to us to mygurumentoring.com and we can set that meeting up, and it will be you and I having that one-on-one conversation together. Okay. And understand, my biggest thing out of this, Gary, is to get the first responders the help that they need. Okay.
Yes.
And if they can stay in, they can get the help that they need, and they can stay in and they can continue to do their job, great. I'll be very, very happy for that. My goal is to remove them from their career. My goal is to help them get rebuilt. And if that means they get rebuilt and they stay, that's great. If not, we then move them over into the business world and make them a success that way.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because I know that's true from your perspective, that this isn't a get everyone out philosophy, because we need first responders in the world.
Sure, yes.
We need them to be healthy, and that's absolutely true. So folks, if you haven't quite got that message there, that's very, very key message from Brian, that this is about enabling people that want to stay to be able to stay if that's the right for them and that's what they want to do. But equally for those that might feel trapped, to be able to see a way forward into a new career and a new opportunity, which in many cases is going to be folk running their own businesses and having the support to do that. So mygurumentoring.com is the place to go. I also know that you'll find Brian Livingston on Facebook, folks. He's pretty active there too. So you're happy with folks to connect with you there, Brian?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Reach out. They can, they can follow me. They can DM me through Messenger. They can reach out to me that way as well. Whatever way they're the most comfortable. If they don't want to follow me because they might see somebody, we may see their name there and they're worried about that, then go through the mygurumentoring.com route. But just the only thing that I can say is understand you're not alone. Okay. You're not, we're there, I'm there to be able to help you. Okay, Gary, I know you're there to be able to help them as well. And people even beyond the first responder industry, if you're struggling in your career, if you're struggling, you're having difficulties, reach out, find those mental health aspects, do what Gary's talking about, and do that preventative maintenance on your mind already. Get started on that. Find some books that will bring you to that mindfulness space. Well, whatever it's going to be, okay, we're there to be able to help you guys become the best version of yourself that you can be.
Because we only get one version of that, so it might as well be the best. And
Exactly.
It's possible. It's absolutely possible for everyone. Brian, I want to thank you for being my guest here today on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Gary. I really appreciate the opportunity, and, hopefully we get some people who, reach out and we can help them.
As they will. So, folks, once again, thank you for joining us on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. We've got Brian Livingston with you here today, who's been talking about his programs to support first responders, stay in their first responder role, or to move into businesses. He's got that goal of supporting 10,000 people creating $2.5 million businesses by 2033. If you haven't checked out my new book, Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment, very relevant for today's interview with Brian, please go and check it out at yesforsuccess.guru. And once again, please like and subscribe the podcast on the podcast or on our YouTube channel, which is now over 18,000 subscribers. So get in and join us and watch us there too. Once again, I'm Gary Ryan, your host and founder of Organisations That Matter. I look forward to joining you with our next episode. Bye.